routine to child must be in the gene. They have so much greed, speak of so much need. Don't honor kindly, can't understand how the good will lead the land, but don't mind them, they guide you so spare. Don't mind them, the evil they do will find them. Don't mind them, I beg, they kind you so spare.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Edra Soto in Conversation with poetry by Spencer Diaz Tootle. I'm your host, Robert R. Shane, art critic and associate professor at the College of St. Rose here in Albany, New York. I want to thank the Center for Art and Design at the College of St. Rose for presenting tonight's event. And a special thank you to artist Diseño, who is helping out with tech tonight. Tonight, I'll be in conversation with Edra Soto. Then we'll turn it over to all of you for a Q&A. And finally, in the tradition of the Brooklyn Rail, we will have a poetry reading by Spencer Diaz Tootle. And first, let me say the music you were listening to, Ugochi, was from a playlist by the Chicago DJ Sadie Woods. It's her playlist, Party as Protest, which you can find on SoundCloud. So it's my honor to introduce Edra Soto. Puerto Rican-born Edra Soto is an interdisciplinary artist and co-director of the outdoor project space, The Franklin. Her upbringing and relationships with communities in Puerto Rico and the US inform her artistic practice. In 2019, Soto's work was included in 3 exhibitions supported by the MacArthur Foundation's International Connections Fund: Repatriation at Museo del Arte de Puerto Rico, Cross Currents at the Smart Museum, and Close to There in El Salvador, Brazil. Recently, Soto completed the public art project Screenhouse, currently on view at the Boeing Gallery of Millennium Park, Chicago. She has been the recipient of numerous awards, including the Joan Mitchell Foundation Grant, the inaugural Foundwork Artist Prize, and the Illinois Arts Council Grant. Soto has attended residency programs at Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, Beta Local, the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation, Headlands Center for the Arts, Project Row Houses, and here in our backyard, Art Omi. Soto holds an MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and a bachelor's degree from Escuela de Artes Plásticas y Diseño de Puerto Rico. Soto is represented by Luis de Jesus, Los Angeles. And our poet tonight is Spencer Diaz Tootle. Spencer Diaz Tootle is an activist, caregiver, and artist from Savannah, Georgia, and now based in Chicago. She has been published by the University of Chicago and the Denver-based Nudie Magazine, among others. In 2017, Spencer was a featured poet for the 5th Star Honors Award ceremony. Other accolades include being awarded as a 2020 Bob Curry Fellow at the Second City and a 2019 Movement Maker within the National Network of Abortion Funds. You can find more of her work via her Instagram at Spencer Diaz Tootle, which you see on the screen. Edra, I thought we could start off by talking about your most recent ongoing project, your Graft series, in which you transplant vernacular architectural forms from Puerto Rican houses built in the 1950s and 60s into gallery spaces. Could you tell us a bit about how you came to this work, to this project?
Thank you so much, Robert, for inviting me. Thank you, Spencer, for being here. I'm honored to have a conversation with you, Robert. So we're gonna talk about Graft. Yeah, so this particular image that you see here is the balcony of the house where I grew up. I grew up in Puerto Rico. I lived there for 27 years before I moved anywhere else in the world. And this was my view. And I never thought about the significance of this till I guess one day I was invited to do to be a part of an exhibition at an alternative space called Terrain. And this was back in 2013. And Terrain is located in Oak Park in Chicago, and it's it's a common house, American house, and it have an open facade. And during that time, I was traveling back and forth to Puerto Rico, and I was thinking about, I started imagining one day while I was walking around my neighborhood, um, I start imagining, what if I transplant these rejas from Puerto Rico into the rejas, into the facade of the house. Um, and that was basically the beginning of this project, just imagining uh, a very different way of representing my identity, my physical presence, my form of sort of making a statement about where I'm from, uh, and what I find to be an element that have a kind of complex identity, because vernacular architecture is not really meant to be uh, contemplated. Is there are elements that exist within the household. This is, you can see, this is a documentation of the different houses that I photograph, that I have photographed in the past. So, and one thing about the rejas and the quiebrasoles, so rejas will be the raw iron fences, and quiebrasoles are the decorative concrete blocks. And I start thinking about who are the authors of these decorative patterns. These are not, it's not strange that artists and designers have found inspiration of these patterns, from these patterns, but I start thinking more about them in terms of physical presence, and how, to me, the project is called graph because I start thinking about them as skin, as my skin transplants. I start thinking about, how do I kind of habitate, or inhabit a space, or insert myself in a space, and the different forms of inserting yourself. It could be with a kind of great visibility, or it could be almost invisible. So these particular images that you see here are sort of the forms of tourism to represent Puerto Rico. Can you move to the next image? And so you can see them over and over again. All of these were taken at the airport, Luis Muñoz Marin in Puerto Rico, and at different times. And this is also like one reason that I felt motivated to think about the rejas as something that could potentially be representative of the culture, of the visual culture of Puerto Rico. I perhaps because of the hard history of the relationship of Spain with Puerto Rico, and perhaps what could be the possibilities of just changing this particular form of representing Puerto Rico to tourists. And it's almost like settling for this is the emblem that represents the island, and this is just one particular this particular architectural element that is called garita. It exists in prominently in El Morro, which is the Spanish fort, the historic Spanish fort in Old San Juan. And it will be a point for interest for tourists to visit, but it only exists there in in the island. Uh, so it's very interesting that this became sort of like such a prominent element and still, as you can see, in a contemporary context.
Yeah, so this one piece of Spanish colonial architecture becomes kind of the emblem for all of Puerto Rico when you're looking in the tourist marketing, whereas the rejas are ubiquitous, right? Throughout Puerto Rico, you're finding them everywhere, and perhaps a much better marker of a kind of Puerto Rican identity. And they also have, you know, in your work, you've been grafting or inserting them into gallery spaces. But these works, the rejas also have an older history, right? They were already sort of grafted from sub-Saharan Africa, right? What were some of the things you found in your research about the origins of the patterns that we see?
Yes, I became very curious about the origins of the pattern. So the only thing that I could associate the physical appearance of these patterns was with African patterns and African textiles. And I start thinking about how to find information about this. And I guess I got a little creative in in terms of how to find this information. And um, I found a monograph by a professor and architect. His name is Jorge Ortiz Colom. And he wrote a monograph titled "The African Influence in the Design Build of the Edification of Puerto Rico." And in this monograph, he talks about about the criollo architecture that incorporates rejas and quebrasoles that are originated in sub-Saharan Africa through the population brought to Puerto Rico as slaves to work plantations during the rise of colonization. So he argues that this influence is largely overlooked by historians due to the impression that, and this is a quote from him, that Africans could not transplant their ancestral ways of life under the inhumane conditions of their transfer and the lack of freedom of their new home. And it was previously thought that this decorative architecture was an amalgamation of European features that had undergone tropicalization through the Western lens. To the growth of commercial sugar trade between Puerto Rico and the US. In the late 19th century, the style of criollo architecture was rampantly appropriated in the southern US. And according to Ortiz Colom, sometimes even purchased outright as entry homes and relocated to the US. So this was sort of like revelatory information for me. I felt like always felt suspicious about the importance of these patterns. They're not typical. They also the great variety of design, the decorative patterns that you can find. Not only in Puerto Rico, but in sectors of Latin America. And so I start thinking about also where they live. They usually are found in lower and middle class communities, and how to elevate their importance will be, I think it required a lot of help, a lot of assistance. So I thought I cannot do this by myself. And there's not great validation of the history. So I thought that the only way of doing this was to kind of start an archive where I can invite contributors from different disciplines uh, to expand on the history of these fences. So this particular one that you're looking at, it was made for the exhibition Temporal Puerto Rican Resistance at the Museum of Contemporary Photography. That was this year. And I felt very honored to be a part of this exhibition where most of the work exhibited was presented by uh, uh, photographers that do professional documentation and photojournalists. And my form of taking pictures has been always my way of documenting and also forms of for me to remember because I have terrible memory. So I use I use pictures to archive things and remember things. And this particular iteration of Graft was dedicated to the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. And it took me a couple of years to really understand how to approach this subject of the hurricane without feeling like I'm being too literal or like kind of making a spectacle of the tragedy of others. And I was there. I felt the impact of Maria, and I know with all my heart that it wasn't what I experienced wasn't as bad at all as some people where they lost everything. Um, but I could feel, and I was there, feel the tension and the, it was just a very difficult time. So it was to me an amazing opportunity to just reflect on this moment. Uh, and at the time, so when I go to Puerto Rico, I go to visit my mother who is elderly, and I spend a lot of time with her, and I spend a lot of time in the house. So the pictures that you see are not only pictures. I documented the landscape because the landscape was quite transformed. Like in ways that I've never seen it before, and also decided to integrate some personal pictures, photos of places in my house, and the television, which is kind of how I have sort of received information through during my upbringing.
And so when viewers approach this iteration of Graft at the Museum of Contemporary Photography in Chicago, as they got close, there are these viewfinders. And behind them are the photographs that you had taken as you were walking the post-Maria landscape in Puerto Rico, and the images also taken in your home, media images as well. And this was, what inspired this sort of move with Graft from just working with the quebrasoles and rejas as a kind of skin that you transplant or graft into the gallery to this new interaction with the viewer, where they're looking in and having a very different bodily experience with the work?
Yeah, I think I was interested in expanding the narrative and having this information, this visual information integrated into the rejas sort of allows for the reja, for people to imagine, and so almost like travel to these places in Puerto Rico. And so, yeah, I think basically my intention was to provide more information than just the decorative pattern. like I said, sometimes the patterns can feel fully visible, but sometimes they feel invisible. And I have experienced both uh, while making the project Graft. So especially in exhibition spaces that are like white cubes, like it could be a museum or a gallery. There's not a lot of dynamic spaces to react. So you can see this particular one, this particular iteration of Graph was at the Chicago Cultural Center. And if you notice, there's in the top of the big wall, there's two lines, and those are windows, and those windows were completely blocked by a white wall. And but it's a pretty uh, substantial wall. Is over 30 feet long, and I really saw a great opportunity to uh, to present the project in this wall. And this is a part of a two-person exhibition at the Cultural Center called titled Forgotten Forms. And so the pieces that are in front of the wall are by Yelena Hall, who's an artist from Ukraine. So we were paired by the Ukraine Institute of Modern Art um, the National Museum of Puerto Rican Arts. It was a really cool and interesting partnership. And as soon as they paired us, I knew I told them I want to be the backdrop of her work. And also I will know how to activate, my my project. And because the walls were completely blocked, I immediately thought of the viewfinders as windows, that provide a view, an imaginary view that is the documentation. But so they're not really imaginary, they're like the documentation of uh, my research. So it will be, I include not only pictures of the hurricane in this exhibition, but pictures of vernacular architecture, um, and life in Puerto Rico, uh, and personal narratives also.
So the windows were already blocked before you got there?
Yes, and
Yep.
and so there was uh, no possibility of opening that wall at that time. So I actually saw it as a great opportunity. Uh, I can provide a view through uh, this form, and because I have so much documentation. Every time I visit Puerto Rico, I just take pictures of everything, and so it gave me the opportunity of sharing that the documentation of the project, so it informs. It kind of gives more information to the audience, and um, so I think of it as I guess take a look in into what I see.
And it's a wonderful play in this space because the quebrasoles would generally be used to let in light and um, airflow into the houses. And here you have this museum space where all of that light was cut off, and so it's like you're using the quebrasole to almost heal the space to create these places where one can look out again as they had been able to do so.
Yeah, it was a
And,
true simulation of, like viewing.
and I love the way you were talking earlier about the importance of the the history of the quebrasoles and rejas and their precedent in African patterns that have been ignored, a contribution that's been whitewashed from Puerto Rican architectural history, and how your work brings us back to that. And in fact, documentation is a very important to your work. So online, you have a number of PDFs with contributions, like you were saying, from historians, I think artists, poets, to kind of inform people. And I think we also have a slide of some documentation that people were reading at the exhibition, right? What would they find in these pamphlets?
Yeah, so in this part, for this particular project, I solicit the contribution of Warren James, who is the director of architecture of the architecture program at Art Omi in upstate New York. And I also solicit the contribution of Charmaine Cruz, who is a Puerto Rican curator. Both of them are Puerto Ricans. And these texts are available in, like you said, in the PDF section of my website, which is my name, edrasoto.com. So you can read them. They're beautiful contributions. And I also, when I invite the four literary contributors, I don't really dictate, or I don't like to impose or how this is going to be addressed. I think it's important that they approach it the way they see fit. And so
I'm staying with Graft for a little bit. I'd like to look at your public sculptures, the Screenhouse series. The
Sure.
first iteration was at the Arts Club of Chicago. The second is on view at Millennium Park in Chicago until 2021. And what I find fascinating about this project is the quebrasoles, which were just a facade to the architecture, a decorative element, have now become the structure, a freestanding structure. And I was curious about that transition as you moved the quebrasoles off of the facade, off of the wall, and made them their own entities.
Yeah, thank you. This is an exciting iteration of Graft because it's still responding to the environment. This particular one, as you know, it's at Millennium Park, and this is a park. Everything is concrete at the park. So I knew right away that I needed to use concrete for this project. So it was a great opportunity to explore this material. At this scale, I use the proportions of the common house of Puerto Rico to create this particular structure. It's made, you see all the kind of pillars are also responding to the adjacent structure in the park. Yeah, this particular structure, the donors pavilion, and it's so it was I really tried to respond in all these different ways. The picture on the left is my source, my personal source. This is from a house, a neighbor's house in the neighborhood where I grew up. And also another thing that I was keeping in mind when designing Screenhouse for Millennium Park was having this space that is open, with the purpose of having public interaction. So to become an immersive space, also to become activated by other artists. So I know this is actually soon we are going to have an activation by a dancer organized by a group of students from the School of the Art Institute. So it's going to be the first official activation, and it's going to be publicized in the next month. So I'm very excited because it's because of COVID, everything sort of slowed down. But there will be documentation so people can see it at home. And um, I think the project also was extended up to winter of 2022. So we will have the opportunity of doing more activations in the future.
That's wonderful. And you've had a long history of activations and collaborating with people. Let me pull up Manuel Graft. This was part of the MacArthur Foundation exchange, right?
Yeah, close to there. Or it was a project organized by Jordan Martins, and he curated uh, this project. He invited me and a group of amazing artists. Many of them were musicians, and one of them, one of the artists was Sadie Woods, who you played the record earlier, and she's there playing. But
This is her on the
Sadie
right.
and I have collaborated in the past. We collaborated couple of years ago. I invited her to create a playlist that respond to my project Open 24 Hours that I had an exhibition at the Museum of Contemporary Art. And so I've been interested in her work and what the music plays a role in this project. And so we keep collaborating. And this was a really fun activation because it's a project, it's an artist run space in Brazil, and the space itself have a lot of character and age. And so it was really just wonderful to I felt so honored to have this this project happening there. And kind of the you see like that picture sort of really captures the enthusiasm of this group. Everybody was so happy to be there. That's probably one of the best experiences that I ever had, to travel to Brazil and see this incredible place. And right before everything closed, isn't that crazy? That happened in January. It was really just incredible.
Yeah, it looks like a wonderful time. You can feel the joy in it. And so much of your work is marked by that generosity for the community with which you are engaging. Who is the audience here? Are these mostly people from the neighborhood, the surrounding area where this project space is based?
People that visit the gallery, but also the artists that were a part of the cultural exchange. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're everybody. And people I knew, people I didn't know.
Yes. And I should just point out that your initial intervention in the space was to put these rejas patterns with, looks like, is it a kind of
yeah, it's aluminum foil adhesive. Yeah, that so one like the fun part of this particular iteration is that I always had this idea of or I have done it with collaborators where I sort of put all the materials for visitors and public viewing, like drafting materials. We have used scaffold, we have used ladders, all kinds of materials to make these patterns on windows. And this is the first time I put the patterns on a wall. This was the space given to me and the material that I brought. So the picture that the previous picture I get, this one is a source uh, photo. So I've been doing this particular pattern with the aluminum foil because it's what I can do handmade. Yeah, I cannot do some of the other patterns with this, but I can do this one. So and I can also be creative about how I kind of compose a pattern in the space.
And that the community or relational element in here, sometimes what we call relational aesthetics, where the artist sets up a situation and the work becomes about the relationships that emerge in the people who activate the space. I think back even earlier, a few years ago, to your Domino Domino piece, a collaboration with Dan Sullivan, your husband, and the founder of Novelists Woodworks. So this was a domino table that you created, and the scene here, the photo here, is at Hunter East Harlem Gallery, correct? And then, yeah, could you tell us a bit about this iteration? And then the Domino Domino traveled, right? It's been, I think it's still circulating?
Not
no.
not right now, but it did travel to few places. So I think there's a picture. Maybe you can look for the next one. That one. Yeah. So if you can see to the left, this will be the original domino table that you will find at a plaza in a county in Puerto Rico. And while visiting Puerto Rico, I found one of these tables, and I start thinking about my husband's furniture work. Uh, the kind of furniture that he makes is mid-century type of uh, inspired by mid-century modern style. And I start associating the style of this particular public furniture to the mid-century style. Growing up in Puerto Rico, this mid-century style furniture wasn't familiar to me at all. I grew up with rattan and wicker furniture. So I start also thinking about the sort of the handcrafted element and the value, like how expensive some of this furniture can be. And I start just imagining, what if we create a domino table, version of the domino table in this kind of mid-century style. I mean, it's a representation of the table, so it's trying to look as similar as the original, but using them like high-end materials, and then we do the inlay to put the representation of the fences, the rejas.
And was this before you had started the Graft series?
I think I was doing graft already. So can't remember the date right now.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Sorry
okay. I was just curious because there's a similar logic, I think, that idea of transplanting something. It's like you're
Yes,
crafting the domino table into a new, various new environments, different types of galleries and spaces.
yes. So
And
yeah, the table travel from community like spaces that focus on social justice and social engagement, Hunter is Harlem. This particular picture captures the community that they already knew that were adjacent to them, their neighbors, and the curator of the one of the curators of the project kept telling me, you need to bring the table to the neighborhood. It's going, they are going to come into the gallery. And it was actually like quite moving. My husband and I arrived to the opening, and there's this community of Puerto Ricans playing, and it was a group of men and then a group of women, and they were sort of like kind of in feud about, it's our turn to take the table. So it was, and it was so moving. Like, we were in tears. We were like so happy that this made perfect sense. It felt almost like the centerpiece of this really amazing exhibition that had really prominent artists. So it was a great experience.
So many of these folks are from Puerto Rico, so this work really offered a kind of space of belonging, I would imagine, a sense of home as they entered into it.
Yes, yes, it was fascinating. Then, but like you mentioned, yeah, you have travel. So not only here, I think this was the most, uh, to me, the most effective way, the most effective connection to a community. But other other places really also uh, use the table, and it was really fun to watch. At the We brought it to an art fair, to Expo Chicago, and at the art fair, I will the picture that is there, that the previous one, oh yeah, that, sorry, that one, that, yeah, there is at Expo Chicago, and there's a group of 4 artists that were playing. And I will go and play with people and teach them the games that I know. Um, and the previous picture is the installation, how it looked at the, um, yeah, this was at the, I think this was at the Perez Museum. Maybe not. I'm sorry. Maybe this is at Hunter East Harlem. But it traveled from Hunter East Harlem to the Perez Museum. So
And it really brings the community in, like you said, and you and Dan Sullivan have been bringing the community in to your backyard with your project, the Franklin. You've designed a project-based space. I think we have a view upside. I don't have one. Sorry, we had it. I remember I've seen a photograph from one of the streets, and you can see this as you're walking through the neighborhood.
yes, it's visible from the street. People
Yes.
can see it. Yeah, and they will know who we are because of the Frank.
Yes. So tell us about the Franklin, and why you decided to construct this space, and what are some of the kinds of projects that have taken place here?
Yeah. So okay. So when I was a grad student, I did few projects that, with the goal of creating installations that uh, celebrated, like, integrating multiple disciplines, and it was something that I sort of been pursuing for a long time. So after grad school, I found in the artist-run community of Chicago, I found, you know, I I felt welcome, and I found connection with different types of communities within that community of the artists run. So there was a group called Polvo that was run by a Mexican artist. His name is Miguel Cortez. And I always talk about this because that was sort of like my first, like, true experience immersed in the artist run community, uh, do it yourself type of experience, meeting a lot of artists that are still friends and colleagues that I have collaborated and also have brought to the Franklin. So I found great inspiration in the artist run community, and um, this was I graduated in 2000. So the Franklin was made in 2012. I was invited to do an exhibition at a community college. And they gave me a year to conceive what kind of installation or project I wanted to bring to their space. And I invited my husband to collaborate. At this point, we have, he have been helping me um, finish or build projects. And I told him I want us to collaborate as intellectual partners. Let's come up with an idea together. And I've been obsessed with wanting to have open my house or an apartment gallery. And we were at that point living here in this house in East Garfield Park. And he wasn't really down for kind of living in flux, like putting pictures up and down and having that mess, which I'm actually glad because we do have a big collection of art that have been sort of also through the relationship with the artist run community where I've met artists and I exchange, we trade, or we have, my husband also love collecting art. So we will support nonprofit organization through fundraisers or buy from artist run fundraisers as well. Um, and 12 I mean 10 years 12 years later we have a big collection. And so we decided to do the space outside. And one particular thing about the Franklin is that I thought of it as uh, or I thought about the different models that already were established and exist in Chicago, and what kind of space we can create that become a contribution to that artist run culture rather than replicating the same model of the apartment gallery, which is the most popular one. And also, this is a great model for us because it really also speaks about who we are. Is kind of visible to the neighborhood. Is open. Is we also when we don't have exhibitions there, we hang out there. We have dinners there. We put a hammock there. Like
That's great.
it's sort of is integrated with our life. So
Yes.
it's not trying to pretend to be what it sort of it can exist also and uh, for what it is, but it also house culture, which we love.
And this was one of the really memorable projects. This was by Chris Smith.
Yes,
Correct? Yep.
so Chris Smith was one of those artists that I met that during the years with my involvement with the artist run. And he was at the time he was an undergrad from the University of Illinois in Chicago, and he run few project spaces. He did a project called the Medicine Cabinet. He also did a project titled Sofa King. He did another project called Terraformer, which was at an abandoned lot, and he will like ask artists to make houses or shelters for stray cats. So someone that had great imagination and just really amazing uh, ways of connecting people. And I met a lot of fantastic artists through his projects. And so he did this project that was responding to the Garfield Park Conservatory that is in proximity to our house. It's 2 blocks away from here. And the project is called Conserver. And what he did was he concealed the space with these found plastic bags and hand built a furnace that create humidity inside the space. And inside the space, you see the picture with all the little plant pots. So these are plants that were rescued from the conservatory that were discarded. So the intention was to revive them inside the space. So very endearing, magnificent execution. I thought that maybe the Franklin will burn, but it would have been glorious because it's one of my favorite projects that I ever seen at the Franklin. It's really significant, responding to, you know, in relation to the conservatory. So I just thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful, that sense of care that comes through this piece that I think resonates so much with your work in general. So the fact that he's gathered all these plastic bags that would have otherwise just been polluting and ending up in the ocean, to rescue these tiny plants, right? But to try to keep their life going. And it was very warm inside, right? Because it was basically
yes. You were sweating.
This was like February or so, right? This was a pretty cold.
Yeah, he did few projects at the Franklin. He always wanted the hardest times of the year, which I also appreciate, because who can deny the weather in Chicago? I mean, it's something to really you know, not deny. We cannot deny it. It's very, it's a thing of its own.
I was in Chicago this past February, and I'm still cold.
Yeah, those moments.
And the Open 24-Hour series, this is also something that's been drawn upon in your neighborhood. There's display cases here, again by Navalis Woodworks.
Yeah, he collaborated with the fabrication of these towers that are were to house my found bottles. Yeah.
With a rejas design, right? In the
yes.
And then, yeah, tell us about how you found these bottles, the significance of these, and where they came from.
Yeah, so I think I've been noticing for many years since I live in East Garfield Park, the amount of the treated garbage, and it is I guess commonly known. If you look, if you go online and you look for East Garfield Park, perhaps you will find some documentation of the park that they will show pictures of the garbage. So it's not a strange, which is also like why people don't talk about the garbage in East Garfield Park a little more, because it's perhaps you know, as you know, the archaeology of garbage is just something that can reveal so much about the place where you live. And I start thinking about it in those terms. I was thinking, well, what is here? One of the things that I kept seeing were bottles of liquor. And among the bottles that I will see, the ones I find the most were liquors of cognac. So this is an example of the flask of Remy Martin. And that just lead me to learn a little bit about history that connects African-American culture with cognac, the significance of cognac. And I just start thinking about their cultural value, the bottles as cultural value, and what if this cultural value I can rescue or replace it by removing it out of the streets and reintroducing the bottles to society for their consideration.
Thank you. And I definitely want to talk about your work this summer in response to the Black Lives Matter uprisings. But before we do, I want to just quickly look at Tropical American. It's just one of my favorite pieces of yours. Could you tell us about this project and some of the various iterations that it's taken?
Thank you so much. So this probably is one of those works that it was a surprise for me to arrive here, because it is something already explored in the canon of art history. A lot of artists have made flags to sort of as an emblem for their own beliefs, but I never thought that I will join or I will kind of create work of something that is already established. But at the same time, as soon as I start doing this project, I felt there's already a conversation established about this particular form. And my motivations were related to Puerto Rico, of course, and my relationship with Puerto Rico and the United States, and how do I talk about this relationship. And at the time, I was doing a residency at the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation, and to travel to my studio, I have to go on a bicycle and go in a man-made path, and this path was quite breathtaking. It was beautiful, with this amazing garden of green, all varieties of green plants, tropical plants. And so that was sort of the beginning of the project. As you know, the Garfield Park Conservatory is in proximity to our house, and they do have an amazing tropical garden. And my mother was a plant collector and a great green thumb. Like she really had so many. She was obsessed with plants. When I got married, she grew orchids and made the flower arrangements for all of us. It was kind of outstanding, how she could grow any kind of plant. So I start thinking about reclaiming the reclamation of the U.S. flag through this move. And what I decided to do is kind of use a little bit of the aesthetics of the American quilt making, but also thinking about the geometry of the rejas. And so it was a combination of these things that this is the final product. This is what I did with all these ideas. I was thinking about all of those things. And what I did was a combination of handmade collages that then I photograph, and then I digitally render the composition. And so I did these versions of the US flag, and then I did other version of the Puerto Rican flag and another version of the Chicago flag. I just thought I assess all of the places that I see as my places.
Yeah, and I love the way they bring together so many elements, like you said, your mother's green thumb, and so both through her presence and the Puerto Rican flag, there's Puerto Rico in there, there's the American quilt making practices. I think in particular of Bell Hooks, the cultural theorist, who's written about her grandmother's quilt making practices in rural Kentucky, and their and the importance in Black family life for bringing beauty within the home. That's just, this work, I think, condenses so many ideas about environment, care, identity, pluralism. And then I would love to see them waving with the fans there. That must be great. This summer, you had been doing a number of social media posts, on Instagram specifically, in response to the state violence against Black and Brown people, and creating memorials, really, using, I think the source material are the images that you would find in the media of people who had been killed by police, and you would add the flower and and then on the second, when you swipe the picture, you would get the media account of that person's death. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. Well, I think, you know, like so many people, I felt so affected by the death of George Floyd, and right after that, I thought that it was the most natural thing for me to get involved in the social movement. I wanted to be a part of the social justice movement somehow. And back in 2004, I I did a project called A Year in Review, which documents the year 2004. And I use this particular medium, which is soft metal. And at the time, I was using it for the same purpose, to archive images that I found in newspapers. And newspapers are, at the time, it was not, in 2004, there was no internet. I received the news from the newspaper. At least I didn't have a computer at the time, so I read the news from the newspaper. And I was very intrigued by how newspapers decisions of publishing uh, photographs. So the photographs of entertainment news or world news or national news are all in very particular and very different sizes. And I thought that was very conspicuous and also interesting, how like entertainment news are usually published in a very large scale, while the world news are very small. And I try to make a representation of that through this documentation of the year using this material. And so they're evocative of the uh, Mexican milagros, or so they're like this particular motif that have a lot of significance. And I start thinking about just the meaning. And I it's sort of like traveling back in time and then thinking, oh wow, I think this will be my preferred material to to document these pictures, and sort of highlight the life of a person and that have been killed. And I at the time I started the documentation, I felt quite ignorant about the situation, how just how incredibly prominent this has been happening for so many years. And it was such an eye opener, this time. So well, I found a lot of names through the protests, where I will go to a march and I see people holding banners with all these names. So after that, I start researching all the different names and reading all the different stories. And sometime later, after I started the project, I found a significant list of thousands of names And this list is divided in between people that have been killed uh, by police and people that have been killed armed and unarmed, and also people that have been killed with mental illness and the stories of mental illness. So it's quite profound and moving and important. So I thought there's no reason why I should not do this, not get involved. And it just, it was, yeah, I did it with great sincerity.
And I think that intervention that you make in terms of media is really important. For one, there's a very important transformation that happens when you take that image of the person from the newspaper, for instance, and render it in the metal. It gives a permanence. It shows the importance of that person's life, and yet the scale, that sort of intimate scale, conveys this sense of care for the person, and that you're taking the time to remember and asking the viewer to remember too. There was a New York Times opinion piece, something with the title of Black life is a perpetual state of mourning in America. I can't remember exactly. It's cited in the philosopher Christina Sharp's book In the Wake, on Blackness and Being, in the first chapter, and Sharp responds to that. And both Sharp and the author of this New York Times piece, whose name escapes me, I'm sorry, note that even for white allies with the best of intentions, they can see what's happening, they can protest, but then they can just go back to their lives. Whereas the violence, to endure unjust death, to have to live with that in your family, is a pain that just doesn't heal for people. And I think the way that this moves us beyond the headline into a kind of permanent form is very important. They're works of both protest and memorial in a very poignant and much needed way. And most recently, so you're now working on a kind of mural sized project of this. This is at Luis de Jesus, Los Angeles?
Yeah, so I didn't really imagine that it will take this turn, and ended up at an actual exhibition. I was making the pieces and using Instagram as a form of publicizing them and sharing, with the picture, an expert of the story of that person, because I keep seeing the names but not the story. So I thought, I think I can put the three parts together and just share it like that, just a little bit, to sort of expand on the importance of each of these individuals, and what it means, as Americans, their lives. So Luis is an amazing individual, and he proposed to me to do an online exhibition of this project, but a month later, so he decided I want to actually show the work. And because I didn't make it for a gallery presentation, I also didn't want to fall short, and so I had to put a lot more work at some point, and just spend day and night like researching and trying to find what will be the right way of presenting this. So the mural that I created ended up documenting more than 300 lives of people that have been killed unarmed, I focus on victims that were killed and that were unarmed, and some of mental illness as well. And it also documents murals that were made by artists and people in boarded businesses. So there's actually representations of artworks, like you can see there, of a graffiti artist. I made that representation, so that would be an example. And so yeah, so I don't think I have the image of the pieces of this, but they're part of the mural piece as well. It was really kind of impossible to document all the pieces individually because they're like, I think they're like more than 400 pieces in total. And I had to at some point stop and pack it, send it. Okay, I can continue on my own, but also documenting it in a responsible way have taken time as well. But yeah, these are examples of documentation of the different march and the protests.
Yeah, I think when they're seen all together on the wall like this, the quantity becomes overwhelming, and particularly when we consider it's just a fraction of.
Yes, it is a fraction. Yeah, this particular wall is 25 feet by 5 feet tall.
And one of the things that struck me going through the Instagram feed was how many names I hadn't heard of. You know, you're doing important work by bearing witness to those names in those lives.
And you know, I did enough research to see that there's other artists, there's many artists that do this. They make representations of these individuals. So I think it's sort of like the flags, you know. I think it's as important to document the lives of these people. So yeah. Sort of like being a part of this movement just by doing this.
Thank you so much, Edra Soto. This has been wonderful, and we have the chat has been lighting up with questions and comments. First of all, we have people tuning in from all over: New York, Chicago, Pakistan. Thank you very much. And we've got some folks on the West Coast too. We had a question from Malvika Jolly from the Brooklyn Rail. In fact, everything I know about doing these kind of live presentations, I learned from Malvika this summer. And so anything that's gone well tonight, you can thank her. Anything that hasn't, that's because I wasn't paying attention enough when I was learning. Thank you so much, Malvika, for joining us.
Robert, thank you for lying on my behalf. I really appreciate it. I would love to hear a little bit about the shed, the Open Sheds project that you have. I've been hearing about this partnership kind of for the last couple of months, but I have no idea how it came about. And I was wondering if you could sort of talk about
the Open Shed. Well,
yeah,
it's in exhibition currently at the Franklin, and it's a project made by sisters Cecilia and Marina Resende. And the project is actually a type of interactive mobile structure that was made with found parts of a sculpture that was kind of abandoned. And they do these reconfigurations of them, invite artists to respond to the structures. Yeah, so I know Marina from Brazil because she was a part of the trip and she was our translator as well. And yeah, she's a fascinating artist and individual and writer. She's a writer as well. And I just saw the pictures of the project and I told her, you need to bring this to the backyard. We need to have this here. So we've been housing the project, and there's a great feature that the NADA Art Fair did of our exhibition that is currently at the Franklin titled Teamwork that I organized. And you can see, I put the link of this feature on my website, and you can see it, you can see it, you can see the video of Cecilia and Marina talking about their work. There's also an extended interview that was recently published by 60 Inches from Center from here, the digital publication here in Chicago, that did an interview to Marina and Cecilia about the shed.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Aaron Sickler, Gallery Manager of the Esther Masry Gallery at the College of St. Rose and Curator, had a question for you about the Open 24 Hours piece.
Edra, thank you so much for this really generous presentation. I just had a simple question maybe about the Open 24 Hours. I was wondering where the site is, where it's situated or located, and how that relates to the park.
Oh, the project Open 24 Hours? Well,
or is it in a gallery?
It's not a location. The project. The picture that we show was at the Momentary.
Okay.
That is the satellite of Crystal Bridges Museum. So this piece was exhibited as part of State of the Art. That was a national survey exhibition. But Open 24 Hours is the name of the project, and the project is my collection of bottles that I've been collecting for a long time. These ones were collected maybe in a year and a half, and there's 550 bottles in this display, and I stripped them, I cleaned them, and archived them. Yeah.
Yeah, because you've had several iterations of this piece, even I think just large-scale photographs of the bottles as well.
Yeah, I have made iterations where I combine displays of graft. Like this one, there's other displays using the graft patterns and displaying the bottles. I think it helped me kind of conceal my relationship between Chicago or the United States and Puerto Rico. And I kind of talk about those two. Both of them talk about archiving as well. There was an iteration that I was very proud of that was at a luxury hotel. They had these cabinets, these old cabinets that were very beautiful, and I filled them with still lifes of the found bottles, and in proximity there were other cabinets that had antique bottles. So it was really great to kind of reintroduce this kind of garbage that is considered is out in the field, and sort of bringing them to this kind of luxurious space. So that's really, I like kind of that play of how it travels and defies like hierarchies, in a way.
Yeah, I think that was the Chicago Hilton, maybe. I think that was part of the College Artist Association.
The Chicago Athletic Association. Oh, okay. They have a display cabinet that they use for temporary installations.
You have some comments. People love your aesthetic, especially that red pedestal fan in the Tropical American, and what reads as almost kind of an outdoor clothesline. So here's a question. Could you speak about negotiating with Dan Sullivan, your husband and collaborator on projects? I thought it was interesting. I too kind of have a question with that, because you said at first he used to just fabricate things for you, like that you designed, and then now you've been moving into more of conceptual, intellectual collaboration.
Yeah, I think we're both very clear about what we want, you know. So I definitely love collaborating with him when we have the opportunity, and but he also he do his own furniture design, and he's a musician, so I don't think he have an interest in being a you know, full-time partner with me. And I also have my own ideas, and so but feeling very fortunate that, you know, he grew to ending up having a company that now he fabricate not only for me, but he fabricate for other artists, and they fabricate for commercial, residential, for museums, for institutions. I mean, it's and our current interest is to I think we have various interests. We have the interest of making smaller projects and the interest of making more public art. Uh, Either him as a general contractor managing my project, or as a collaborator. So I guess it depends, you know, on the kind of project and opportunity. But we are sort of living a comfortable place now where, and I'm very comfortable too, like, oh, you should be collaborator, or I'm working with other people, and it's not going to be in Chicago, so that I not necessarily I'll be able to collab or bring him in as a collaborator. So I guess yeah, it's kind of fluid.
Great, thank you. And we have one more question from Lyndon Klein.
Edra, I'm really interested in pattern as well. And I'm a sculptor, but I'm doing a photo essay during COVID about the bars people put on their windows for safety. And there's a lot of that around DC, but I'm really interested in the comparing and contrasting of those patterns. And I noticed that in your work, it doesn't seem to be that you have more than one at a time. Are you interested in the metaphors of each individual pattern?
I guess I don't see much change in the metaphor, but yeah, I think there could be some really strong connection to a particular culture, a particular, depending on the type of intervention. For me, the patterns became important in relationship to where they are going to be presented and how they are going to be presented. So
okay.
I think more about the space and how to, I think I actually, most of the art I make, I really need to look at the space before making something. I'm interested in the work sort of feeling like you have the right tone, the right proportions. Like I feel like I think about it in those terms.
So relationship to the installation itself.
Yeah.
So does that mean you look at the space first and then still have to create the piece?
Yeah, I definitely look at the space first. And I have my archive, my sources that are all from my research and my traveling especially to Puerto Rico. So I use my personal sources. And for the architectural interventions, I look at the space and I try to figure what particular pattern will work well in the space.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amberine, tuning in from Pakistan, was making a comparison to the South-South dialogue. Amberine, would you like to say more about that?
Thank you so much for this incredible talk, first of all. I'm really excited to hear about your work, and also to let you know that I think your aesthetic and the way that you work with patterns and the way that you work with sort of these boundaries that are not opaque, you know, I really, really find that interesting. And I think that that's really resonating with practices that I'm seeing here in Pakistan. You're one of my favorite artists to teach. Because it's just so fun to be able to compare the material, the use of material, the climate, and I think all those things sort of lend to a dialogue that already exists, but I think it's really interesting to talk about within the context of your work.
Thank you.
I think we have time for 2 more questions before we'll turn to our poetry reading. Raven has a question about global events and your work.
I just want to know, how has current global events affected the meaning of your work? Like, has it deepened it, or has it like expanded its personal meaning for yourself?
Can you be a little more specific?
I mean, just in general, when you originally created the work and you had an initial meaning for it, has current events expanded the meaning for yourself?
Well, go ahead, Robert.
To think about it, maybe, you know, you're using an architectural vernacular from the 50s and 60s, and maybe thinking about how the themes you're working with are resonating with what you see going on today. What is the message as we graft those that vocabulary from an earlier time into this present moment?
Yeah. Well, currently, I at least in the last couple of years, I start thinking about conservation of because this is this particular pattern, especially with the following the hurricanes. You know, there's a lot of these fences that get destroyed and then replaced, and so it becomes like also a form of archiving and validating their the cultural importance of them. So I also think about the as every year there's something different and new that I discover, you know, that make me feel that it's still a relevant subject to explore. I guess another thing that I find interesting is the sort of the appropriation of these particular patterns, and how I want to distinguish my work from that kind of practice. So thinking that's why the resources and the sources that I generate are important to me, and the literary contributions as well, because it is very specific, and it's been mostly focused in Puerto Rico.
Thank you. And we'll have one final question, again from Malvika. I can read it from the chat. So one thing she's been enjoying about your work is the way the artwork has a life that extends out of the object. They create a space that suggests a very specific set of spatial and social relations. They kind of contain a pre-written script of how we should move around them. So what gestures and the very particular kinds of in what gestures or very particular kinds of interactions we should do or inhabit with them. And so she's asking, how do you want the audience to move and occupy space around your works and interact with them? Before the artwork, do you think about before that while you're making the artwork? Is it something that emerges out of the work organically? Yeah, I guess so, sort of thinking about the choreography, the viewer's choreography, either improvised or planned.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think about my myself. Well, as an artist, I think about my procedure, how I want people to navigate the space, what I want them to take from the experience. So it's 100% something that I have meditate before making the work. I want to make sure that people take something from it, anything. So what that those things will be. It's almost like I think I plan a lot for these experiences to, how people will approach the space. For example, the work of graph integrating the viewfinders. They're at different heights, and that is a very kind of simple example, but it really means a lot, because you can dictate as an artist how somebody is going to approach your work, and how close they are going to get, and how much they are going to take away as well.
Thank you so much, Edra Soto, for sharing your story and your work with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Just the generous spirit of your work that you brought into our conversation tonight. It was such an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much.
And now I'm so happy to turn again to our poet in the tradition of the Brooklyn Rail. We're going to end with a poetry reading. I'm happy to reintroduce Spencer Diaz Tootle, who is our activist, caregiver, and artist, and of course, poet. And she's going to share a number of pieces for us tonight, including the first one, which is based on a work of Edra Soto's called Graft. This was also part of the MacArthur Foundation exchange. This one cited in Cuba, and Spencer, I'll let you take it away. And well, I guess I should also say this is how you first encountered Edra's work. Someone had invited you to write about this piece, and the two of you have now had a long correspondence. And I think tonight was the first night you saw each other, got to actually meet, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you so much, Robert, and thank you so much, Edra, and thank you everyone for being here. Yes, what Robert said was true. I am an American of Cuban descent, and so I was invited to come and view this exhibit and then write a response, which proved to be really emotional. And Edra's piece was, I just felt so connected to it. And anyway, so this is what resulted of that. A conversation with Edra Soto's Graft, Cuba. I am of the Cuba that is picket-lined and pockmarked, all bruised mangoes and leather skin, weathered grins, capital S secrets tucked inside keepsake boxes long ago slid onto shelves too high for me to reach. Maria del Carmen's vanity lined with dusty vials of agua de violeta, whispers of croquetas wafting, me waking, hungry for a dream I can't remember. The phantom flavors, family recipes scrawled in a language which my stubborn tongue splinters, the salt and sea glass shattering against my unrolled ares. Cuba. I am of La Cultura de Fantasmas, the dysphoric diaspora, the put the Diaz back in my name for Alejandro's sake, Cuba. The I've only seen the island's lights from the tip of Key West, Cuba. The Mac made a lip color called Havana, so I bought it even though it makes my teeth look yellow, Cuba. I am of the Red Star, Cuba. I am of the propaganda Cuba. I am of the Marielitos and the Balseros and the wet feet and the fleet of dolphins saving Elian's life, but not his mother's Cuba. I am of the peepholes and the sinking truths and the unmarked graves Cuba. I am of the Cuba that is a wall of lace, a shroud between life and life, the threads tangled so tightly that I can't unknot them, the eyelets so small that I can't see through them, the pressing my palms, my lips, my ears, my heart against a plywood structure in a sterile museum until I become the art Cuba. And I'm going to read two more pieces. This next one, in thinking about Edra's work and kind of uplifting what is perhaps seen as like the ordinary or mundane or even like the lesser. That's something I try to do in my work a lot too, as somebody who grew up like in poverty and, you know, all that comes along with that. Anyway, so this poem's about growing up and having lice a lot. It's called Lice. I've been brushing my sister's hair since before the comb lost her teeth, boiling and brushing and toiling, hushing this secret of filth, passing the parasite between us all year after year. All y'all's hair so thick, so pretty, so dark, the bugs able to shine so bright, 3 bioluminescent halos making 3 fates holy, 3 brujitas connected, and there are too many strands to ever feel fully disinfected. But sometimes the bugs, they feel like little friends anyway. The itch, a reminder of presence and present. The itch, our own Girl Scout badge, earned through bus rides over carpool, through aftercare over stay-at-home parents, through clinics run by brown women, over that one doctor who looked like Danny from Full House with the fish tank in his office, through these fingers that write this being the same fingers that plucked knits from your baby curls, these fingers that used Rid like massage oil, these fingers that braided Jacob's ladder into our hair and clung to the rungs as we climbed lunar bound, these fingers that strangled the snake in the drain so clogged the shame was pooling, these fingers that are bones, that are teeth, that eke melodies out of untuned piano keys, that dot their eyes with bubbly hearts and spell more than one last name because no, we don't all have the same daddy. These fingers that are compass needles pointing back to home, home which is a circle, home which is a circle of 3 raven-haired maidens tumbleweeding their dirty locks across cemeteries, tossing brushes into the cauldron, dancing in the night, their faces bright, their faces illuminated in the glow of the others. And this last piece I wrote a while ago, and it's quite short, and it became like kind of newly special to me in the wake of the pandemic and the conversation around essential workers. At first it was called Untitled, but now it's called Untitled/Essential. The sun only rises for the rich. I suspect this because I ride the bus early with others like me, nannies and nurses, Jose Luis, who does your lawn, my mother, who will toss your luggage onto the American Airlines bag belt, heavy and sloppy like wet trash. All of us scurrying, the cream swirling into our coffee, the coffee into our veins. We are, all of us, racing the dawn. And I wonder if we, all of us, never got off the bus, would this day stay night forever? Thank you all so much. Thank you. That's all my poems for now.
Thank you so much, Spencer Diaz Tootle. That was absolutely wonderful, a beautiful and poignant ending to what's already been a remarkable evening. Thank you again, Edra Soto. And thank you to all of you in the audience for these wonderful questions and the conversation that we've been having. As we are exiting, we'll have some more music from Chicago DJ Sadie Woods' playlist that you can find on SoundCloud called Party as Protest. It highlights a number of Chicago artists and celebrates their work. As we're leaving, feel free to unmute yourself and say goodbye. Thank you again, Edra, Spencer, and to all of you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, everyone. This has been
Thanks,
lovely.
everybody.